Welcome to Critical Junction episode 24. I'm Mark.
I am Luke.
I'm Jill.
And today we're talking about Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and all things social justice warrior. So to begin, just a definition of what social justice warriors are. So according to Wikipedia, social justice warrior is a pejorative term for an individual promoting socially progressive views, including feminism, civil rights, multiculturalism, and identity politics. The accusation of being an SJW carries implications of pursuing personal validation rather than any deep-seated conviction, and being engaged in disingenuous social justice arguments or activism to raise personal reputation, also known as virtue signaling. So I think one of the more prominent social justice warrior movements in modern history would be Black Lives Matter. And to talk a little bit more about that, Jill, I think you have a buttload of notes.
Well, I wouldn't say a buttload. I have some notes.
Some notes it is.
So, as one of the three white guys on our three white guy panel, I guess I'll just launch into white-splaining BLM.
So BLM is not bacon, lettuce, and tomato?
No, it's not bacon, lettuce, and tomato. No, so BLM, or Black Lives Matter, it's a movement that basically started in 2012 after the case of Trayvon Martin, who was that teenager coming home from the corner store with his Skittles and iced tea. And
he was the hoodie guy, right?
Yeah, the hoodie.
That is a hell of a lot of sugar, eh? Like he's drinking an iced tea, and like we're talking in the States,
yeah.
So it's sugar iced tea.
Yeah, where's the
milk
for the savory? But,
is it sugar iced tea? Because in the States, usually their iced tea is.
Oh yeah, they have a difference. They have iced tea and sweet tea.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know which.
I don't know, but this
anyway.
is besides the point, and maybe a little bit disrespectful to the seriousness of the thing that I'm about to talk about, which is this kid was basically murdered by an overzealous neighborhood watch guy.
So it wasn't a cop. It was just a random.
No, he's more like an evil Paul Blart Mall cop,
right? Yeah,
kind of thing. He's
like Seth Rogen in whatever.
Observe and Report. That's fucking great. That movie. That's an underappreciated little.
It as a comedy. That is not.
No, that is not a comedy.
I mean, there's some comedy bits in there, but man, that is dark comedy.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
it's Taxi Driver, the comedy kind of thing.
So that's where the BLM movement started. Somebody had started a hashtag on Twitter called hashtag Black Lives Matter.
Oh, okay. So that's where it stems from.
And it stems specifically from that one case.
I see.
And that was in 2012. But then that hashtag took on a life of its own, and it started to represent basically all kind of extrajudicial killings by police of unarmed black people. So other cases that have come up over the years that have become part of the Black Lives Matter cause are Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Freddie Gray, Philando Castile. There was also this incident with a guy named Mike Brown, who was killed, but it looks like he was killed while struggling with a cop and grabbing for his gun. So that ended up. I think that in my mind it kicked off the more contentious aspect of the Black Lives Matter movement, because they were using a case that is a little bit more ambiguous as a sort of a focal point for Black Lives Matter, and it just ended up kind of pitting people against each other, because then people are saying, well, maybe there was some justification, like maybe the cop wasn't completely unjustified in firing off his firing arm in that situation, because the guy was literally grabbing for his gun. But nonetheless, they had vigils all over the place for Mike Brown, who it seems might have been a criminal actually engaging in criminal activity, and that's why he was stopped by the cops.
Right.
So I guess that's the general background on Black Lives Matter. Now,
so the origins of the name.
The origins of the name. Now, they they kind of exploded in the news again during the last campaign, the election campaign.
So when you say they, you mean describing it as
the
Black Lives Matter.
people who associate themselves with the Black Lives Matter movement.
Oh, okay. So
It became organized. It became more than just a hashtag. It became
an actual movement.
Actual movement groups, like local chapters calling themselves a Black Lives Matter chapter, or
to draw a parallel, it kind of took on the same type of momentum and life as the Occupy movement did in a way. It sprang up from social media under the Black Lives Matter hashtag and became a mobilization of people standing up for the obvious racism in the U.S. and the
Occupy started that way too, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. So BLM took on that kind of same momentum. People standing up against the noted brutality of American police shooting unarmed black civilians. There's an article that came out in CNN recently saying that black people were 3 times more likely to be shot by police than anyone else.
Yeah.
That's just another elaboration on BLM. But anyway, you were saying.
So during the last election in the States, some people that were calling themselves Black Lives Matter or part of the Black Lives Matter movement, at least for some city somewhere, they had interrupted a Bernie Sanders rally. And they basically took over the stage and took over the mic, and they basically wanted to shut down the rally until their demands were heard or some kind of stuff like this. But it turned out afterwards that at least one of the women who were on that stage doing that thing, there was two women, maybe 3. Who had rushed up on the stage and took over the mic. So one of them, it was found out that she was actually a Republican Sarah Palin supporter, according to her Facebook stuff. Her name was Marissa Janae Johnson. So she's like a right-wing Republican Christian and a Palin supporter. So you get the idea there that at least some people would question the motives of, or not the motives, but the sincerity of some of these agitators claiming to be Black Lives Matter, like as if it might, to some extent, be kind of an agent provocateur kind of thing, where just a stink is being raised for the media in order to actually make the left look bad or make progressivism look bad.
We're seeing an increase of that in a lot of, not just only in Black Lives Matter or Bernie Sanders rallies, but we're seeing infiltrators from extreme right-wing groups coming into these organizations and these movements and stirring up
any left-wing activism
yeah
movement.
Exactly, with the example of Antifa, which we'll get to later on, but you have these extreme right-wingers coming in and stirring up the pot just for the sake of demonstrating that these movements are violent, they're anti-establishment, they're there to tear down everything that we know and just make them look bad. And it's serving them well. They're doing they're very effective at doing this because it's getting attention in the media and it's portraying these movements.
It discredits them to some extent.
Exactly.
That's a big problem these days, being able to tell whether something's real or not.
Whether something's sincere or not. Yeah. Everything is about trolling, and I know. I that's why. So you've got these initiatives to kind of help people in sifting through media and stuff like that, and things like maybe it's the government or Facebook or something putting out some kind of tool for determining what's fake news or not, that kind of stuff. And then you have other people that of course are doing everything they can to discredit that, any kind of initiative like that, by saying that, this is like censorship and all about like the left trying to shut down ideas.
The free speech argument comes up a lot.
Yeah.
The right will immediately say they're trying to impinge on our free speech and shut us down. We have every right to be here and spew this nonsense that we're spewing. But in reality, it's not about that. Free speech has a limit. Free speech ends where hate speech begins. And the right will argue that that's not the case. We have every right to say whatever the hell we want, regardless of what the content of that message is. And then we'll have like the extreme pushback from the left, erupting in violence and people punching Klan members in public, that sort of thing.
And so I think the point is that it's free speech, but free good speech is what we're saying.
But even you can't really do that because
no, I know you can't say that
because then who's to say what's good speech or not?
That's not good to say it's good, But it is true, is what I'm getting at, though.
Well, I mean the basic like liberal idea of freedom of expression, right, is about instead of leaving the door open for some type of authoritarian regime to control what can and cannot be said, what you want to do is let everybody speak and then let the cream rise to the top, right? Because if everybody speaks, then
and all these assholes are in the way.
Then the idiocy of idiotic ideas is laid bare because people can respond to it.
Right.
Whereas if you shut down, off the bat, any ideas of a certain category or something like that, then I guess it's harder for people to actually be able to clearly understand for themselves why something might be a big fail on a logical or ethical level.
They haven't seen and understood it properly.
No, exactly.
Right.
They just know that they've been told that this category of idea is a no-go, But yeah, I don't know how realistic it is to actually police ideas on that level, and then it just leaves the door open for a more arbitrary kind of categorization of ideas that are unfavorable to a specific group, or something like that.
Well, that raises the question of whether or not certain ideas should be censored in the first place. Should they? Like in Germany, for example, the Nazi Party has been completely outlawed. Any mention of, anti-Semitism or the Hitler salute itself has been banned outright. Should that type of mentality be more prevalent in Western society, just in the face of the rise of populist movements and increased hate speech?
Well, what I was trying to get at is that I think what we're trying.
No, answer the question, Luke. Answer the question.
Well, ask that question again, man, because I was drifting off in thought, and I had this other thing to say, and it was blinding my ability to hear what you were actually saying. To
boil it down,
my thing was more interesting at the time, so I just wasn't able to pay attention. Sorry, man.
Continue. No, he was joking.
So sorry.
Should things be censored? Should censorship be
I have to say absolutely not.
Good, because I would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Right.
There's no censorship. It becomes a question of what are we attempting to build and what does this thing that you're saying do?
Okay, so then in that case, should free speech be absolutely free? And come at no cost.
So free speech. It's the attitude that's bearing there. It's not as if they're saying free attitude. They're saying free speech.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
we're going there with an attitude, and if you're building hate, then you're in a sense destroying the world. So go fuck yourself. We hate you.
Right. Like my thought is, yeah, everyone has the right to say whatever the fuck they want, but there's always a consequence. There's a price to be paid for things like hate speech, right? If you spout hate speech, don't be surprised if you get your ass kicked in public, right?
Well, I mean, we have laws against certain actions.
Yes, we do, and the right would argue that those laws are contrary to freedom of expression, right? The right would say that freedom of expression is absolute and undeniable,
unless the laws are things like laws against physical assault, right, which they would appeal to say no, you can't punch a Nazi. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I think that's reasonable. That what should keep us from punching a Nazi is not that their ideas aren't that bad, but that it's just crossing a line to make things physical in a battle of ideas, right?
So should we punch Nazis?
I don't think so. Not unless the Nazis are punching or swinging their arms like this until you get in the way.
In a sense, there's no universal in terms of, someday someone might have to punch a Nazi.
Right,
but to say you should be able
to say there's carte blanche.
Well, that's what the extreme left would say, is there is carte blanche to punch Nazis under any circumstance because by virtue of them being Nazis.
But see, I see that as no different from like these stupid Stéphane Molyneux cult types,
right?
That are like as soon as somebody says that they support the social contract and the concept of government, like at its most basic, then automatically no, you have to shut down all debate because that person is worth nothing now.
Right.
You know that person now thinks that they're justified in doing violence to you as his argument or something like that. And that's the exact same thing to me.
Yeah. It raises something that came up a little while ago. It's on my personal Facebook page. I posted something saying that centrists are the equivalent of not understanding that we can't tell the difference between Antifa and Nazis by being a centrist is complete fucking bullshit, because that's not what being a centrist means. Being a centrist means you're taking a more pragmatic approach to politics based on, compromise, not necessarily compromise, but being rational in the face of this kind of thing. You're not taking an extreme position one way or
that's
another.
just it. I think any kind of absolutism is sort of an abdication of rationality.
Exactly. And like it just
well, that's pretty awesome. That's pretty good.
The conversation kind of snowballed into this. Like, I haven't gotten so many comments on a post in years, and I thought the discussion was amazing, just from both sides. It raised the idea of false equivalency between Antifa and Nazis, right? By comparing them, by equating them as being both sides of the same coin, I think we start to lose a bit of the same argument in one way. I would tend more to support Antifa than I would Nazis, just because Nazism is stupid. The root of the Nazi idea is ridiculous. Promoting one race or one ideology.
Whereas with Antifa, ostensibly, it's the tactics that are reprehensible, rather than the ideas that those tactics are meant to support, ostensibly.
Yeah, I support the idea of Antifa, not the tactics that they're using. Because, again, the moment you embrace any kind of extremism is when you start to lose the plot. Right? There are better ways of I support Antifa insofar as they oppose fascism. That's in their name. They're anti-fascist, right? But as soon as they start looting stores and breaking windows and setting cars on fire, they become fascists. Exactly, right?
The idea is to not be a fascist.
The idea is not to be a fascist. But when they start looting and setting shit on fire, they lose all credibility. They start to equate themselves with the other side. They become the thing they're trying to fight. Right?
Yeah.
Because Antifa at its core was supposed to be about fighting fascism in the 30s and the 20s and 30s in Germany and in Spain and Italy, right? That's where Antifa began. Back in the 80s, with the rise of neo-Nazism in the punk scene, a lot of anarchists started to revive the Antifa movement. And from there, they became the anti-establishment kind of movement that we're seeing today. It's the same type of people who are identifying themselves as Antifa in today's movement, with the anti-Trump supporters and whatever else. Meeting fascism with violence, while it seems a bit logical on the surface, because the only way to fight extremism is through another form of extremism.
Like a fire with fire.
Fight fire with fire. So
Rambo.
it sounds like
First
it'll work. It sounds doable. But in reality, it falls apart.
Better to die for something than to live for nothing.
So true.
Yeah. Where was that going? I kind of lost my train there.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. It's Rambo for the win. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Can we rewind there so we can hear your conclusion, though? I mean, I feel like I missed something there.
What was the last... Where did you end up on that? What was the last thing you said?
Fighting fire with fire?
No, just after that.
I don't remember.
Sum up what you've been saying there. What were you saying?
Okay, I think to sum it up, extremism on either side will not work.
Oh, right. You're saying the center path, basically.
Yeah, like I'm a political centrist. I'm left of center.
Way.
I consider myself a liberal. I'm a liberal progressive. I believe in progressive ideas. I believe in feminism. I believe in multiculturalism. but not to the extreme. I will never take an extreme point of view on that, because the moment you do is the moment you swing too far on the spectrum.
You become fascist.
Right.
Even with yourself in your own mind.
Then you start, exactly, because you start thinking that your side of the spectrum is the one and only best solution.
So can I just say something?
And that goes to dogmatism.
Right.
It becomes a dogma as soon as it's tied down, in a sense.
Exactly.
The problem is
that's like your thing about pointing at something that you had said previously, it's ridiculous. Anytime you try and point at something and say that's what it is, like that's concrete,
right,
then you're automatically wrong, and
you're immediately a fascist.
A
thought fascist. You become a thought fascist.
Yeah, that's true. No, I'm very anti-fascist, and so I'm capable of doing very little without being fascist. Like I'm sure I'm being fascist right now.
I mean, I guess on some
I'm absolutely sure I'm
extremely
right
ridiculously broad definition of fascism.
Well, it's a seed, right, and it's planted, so you have to be careful. You have to be very mindful to not be fascist in any way.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Like the rise of what seems to be a revival of fascism with populist movements and Trumpists and all that.
I don't see it as a rise. It's always been there. It's just being expressed differently now.
I kind of.
You know what?
Therefore building. Yes.
Okay, so I see what you're saying, and some people are saying that it's a good thing that now these people are out of the shadows, and I kind of think it's the opposite. I'm perfectly fine with accepting that there are and will forever be idiots among the human population,
right?
And understanding that that's an inevitability, then I'm also fine with them being shamed into being relegated to the undersides of rocks somewhere,
Shamed?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're saying that we see a rise right now that's not an actual rise in the
it's not a rise of the idea.
It's not a rise of the idea. It's just a rise of those people being willing to come out and express them.
They're becoming more.
Well, I think that's the problem, right?
Right.
Them actually acting on shit ideas.
Well,
that's the problem.
I think the problem is them being more comfortable expressing bad ideas.
No,
right?
I hear you.
Because people like Trump have normalized that type of mentality just by, him being the president of one of the most powerful nations on earth, and also being a fucking racist and misogynist. He's making that type of thinking acceptable in society, and more people are more willing to come out and express those types of ideas. It's not that the idea itself is on the rise. It's always been there, like you said.
Yes, no, you're right. But it being on the rise now, getting media attention and stuff like that is a phase that we're going to be going through. Which will bring it out and help us to face it ultimately, I think, and hopefully get rid of it once and for all, in a sense. But what I was talking about is the seed of the idea is very much the same. It's the seed of fascism that we have that we don't realize we're planting everywhere with the way that we're thinking and stuff. That's what I was talking about earlier, in that it's there. It's always been there, and it is there. Like the way that we're thinking about things, the way that we're coming at things is very ill. I guess.
My question is how to deal with it. Like, is the idea of the social justice warrior the way to go? Are movements like BLM or Antifa the right kind of the way to meet those types of ideas?
Yeah, thinking pragmatically, like.
Because obviously, political centrism isn't going to do it. We've had center stage for years. Especially in the U.S., with Obama for 8 years, here with Justin Trudeau over the past couple of years, Angela Merkel in Germany for the past, 12? People are getting tired of progressivism. And for some reason...
But those people aren't representative of progressivism. Arguably, Trudeau is a bit more, at least he pays more lip service to progressivism than either the other two, but...
Merkel is with her.
No, the only thing that makes Merkel a progressivist is the kind of open border policy.
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
That's helping.
That's exactly the point I'm getting at.
Any immigrants, but other than that specific policy, which could actually have economic motivations from her perspective.
Yeah, but what I was going to get at is that the pushback has been huge just because of that one thing, her open door policy for the refugees, right? We're seeing the Alternative für Deutschland coming up in third place in the election, right? They have 13% of the Bundestag right now.
Yeah.
That's never been seen.
No, but in the last election, the only reason why we didn't see them isn't because nobody voted for them. They actually did exist, and they got like nearly 5% of the vote the last time. It's just that now the threshold was passed where they can actually get
they passed the 5%, and people were allowed to vote for them, and now they have 13% of of parliament. You know?
Yeah.
A far right party is in third place in the German parliament, which hasn't been seen since the end of the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of terrifying, you know.
Yeah.
And what's the best approach to deal with that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is it BLM? Is it Antifa?
Well,
or is it some other balanced approach? How do you fight that kind of ideology?
The only way to fight is the whole love and compassion thing, no? It's the only thing you got to use. I got to throw that in there. I mean, that's the only way to present it that can be a way that that can penetrate, I guess, and be understood. Otherwise, messages aren't heard at all, and no one.
But don't you think there's always people out there, and some ideologies more than others, who are ready to pounce on that as weakness, and in turn and take advantage of
because
that,
their mamas and daddies didn't love
because
them
their
kind of
tactic is more about imposing will, you know, regardless of
No, you're right. They're
love
fascists.
or whatever. Yeah, that I'm just not sure that good always magically triumphs over evil.
What I'm saying is that that there's no one thing that you can choose as a manner. Like you're saying, you're giving these examples of give the examples again. Like what do we do with blah blah blah?
Yeah,
what is it called again? What are we talking about again?
What do we do about the rise of the far right?
Rise of fascism? And
Right. And what I was suggesting is that the only way to face it is to educate. Attempt to educate them in a compassionate and respectful manner, in a sense. You know, you can't face anything with
but
violence.
You know what? I don't think there's such a thing as the only way to.
No, you're right.
I think that has to be part of the kind of cloud of strategies. But I think even though there are some unintended kind of consequences,
you're talking about actions or motivations here.
I'm talking about tactics.
Tactics. Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
in terms of how
I'm not
you
saying
said,
that you can't punch
so the question
a
was,
Nazi out of love, and I'm sure you can, right? Out of complete compassion, you could go, you know what, you really need this right now, and punch that guy in the face if that moment in time calls for it. This is very possible.
That kind of reminds me of.
So you're talking about action here.
Well,
I'm not saying that what I'm saying has anything.
No,
to do
I'm talking about everything, like attitude, action, any type of tactics, rhetoric, whatever it is.
Rhetoric? What's that?
Rhetoric?
Oh, rhetoric.
Yeah.
I thought you were bringing up some sort of like Rick
No.
and Morty,
So I think that there's a place for ridicule and just as much as there's a place for love
so hilarious.
or whatever.
You're standing up for. I can understand that. Yeah, ridiculing.
There's a place for ridicule, shaming, for more radical tactics like Antifa.
Okay,
You're
right. Yes.
Like I've always advocated
as part of a cloud of tactics.
I've always said that we should expose
of tactics.
We should expose bad ideas for the stupidity that they are and laugh at them publicly. You know, bad ideas should be shamed publicly.
Yeah.
You know, if you're being a racist,
Shamed. I don't know. I have a hard time with the word shame.
With the word shame,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, fine. If you're being a racist, that should be exposed.
But that's what ridicule is.
Yes.
Ridicule is ultimately just a kind of shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that should be laughed at. That is a fucking stupid idea. You think you're better than a black person because you're white? What a moron, you know? That kind of thing should be publicly laughed at because it is stupid.
And that's meant to make whoever holds that idea think, wow, I'm kind of ashamed, you know? Like, maybe I am a dumbass, you know?
Right. Because those ideas are objectively stupid. You can prove the stupidity of those ideas. Like, there's no way to back that up logically. There's no way to back up the fact that you think you're better because you're of a certain skin tone than someone else. There is no way to validate that. And that should be shamed publicly. You know, but on the other flip side of that, what you're saying reminded me of a story that I read a little while ago about this one black dude who would have conversations with Klans people and befriend them. And,
I heard about this guy.
And he collected like the robes of the converts just by sitting down, having a conversation with random clans people. Like, why do you think that way? You know?
Collected the robes of the converts.
Yeah, he has a closet full of robes and hoods and shit.
I like how much this kind of matches like the idea of like collections of people's ears that you wear around your neck, like if you're like some kind of Vietnam.
Yeah.
Well, it is very, very similar. He was a warrior in a different sense, right?
Yeah.
He was a social justice warrior right there.
In a way he was, but he was a very passive social justice warrior because like all he did was like he would talk
pacifist.
he was a pacifist. He would talk to these people and tell them about his life. You know, why do you hate me? Here's who I am. You know, I work here. This is what I'm making for dinner. Do you want to come over? Have a cup
so
of tea?
there you go. So there's an idea of an approach, and you could say that is
and it worked.
the right approach.
There were a significant amount of clanspeople who did away with their stupidity because of the way this guy approached them. You know, and like I said, he has a closet full of robes and hoods. It's an amazing. I don't know how well it would work with just anybody, but this guy seemed to have it down.
That's the thing. People have different personalities.
Well, you're saying basically there's mad dogs out there, and sometimes you gotta put that mad dog down. I always remember my friend Jake. You guys know Jake, but we watched. I believe it was a movie called Chicken Hawks about. It was coming from, I wouldn't say from the perspective of pedophiles and stuff like that, but it was a movie about that.
Okay.
And that was, I remember Jake saying that at the end of the movie when I asked him, so what'd you think of that documentary? You know, and he's like, well, you know, sometimes you just got to put that mad dog down, you know. And I don't know, it hit me. It hit me kind of hard, you know. Yeah, it's pretty dark.
But you got to be careful with that kind of shit because then it just becomes
too
easy to say to start arbitrarily categorizing something as a mad dog and saying, okay, now I'm justified in putting that guy down. It's like the rise online of these conspiracy theories involving pedophilia and pedophile rings, where these are being like ascribed to absolutely anybody who's a centrist establishment kind of
this sounds like a whole other podcast if we're going to talk about that.
Sure,
like
we can.
The system and how it drags people into like that type of shit. It's crazy.
But the point I'm making is just that it's become now like an easy go-to as soon as soon as you balk anyone who tries to ascribe pedophilia to anyone that they disagree with. If you balk at it, then you're a pedophile apologist, and therefore also no better than a pedophile, and therefore you're one of the mad dogs.
Like we would all be pedophiles.
That is
like
justified to be put down.
burger, and now I'm a pedophile.
Well, there you go. Exactly.
That's one of the things that bothers me about the extreme social justice warrior movement is the moment you oppose them or that you criticize the way that they're doing things is you become a Nazi, right?
Yeah. And
by association, just because
you are a fascist.
Right,
so what exactly are you pointing at here?
Yeah.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense. You are your own contradiction.
Yeah, do it. I'm supporting you guys, right? I'm on board with what you're trying to do. I'm on board with the social progressive movements. But because I'm criticizing your extreme tactics, don't label me a fucking Nazi.
Well,
I'm not, right? I'm a liberal, for fuck's sake.
This is the thing that holds everyone back from joining social movements and getting larger crowds out there, is that they can't agree with the whole thing.
Right.
You know, they're only agreeing with a part of it, and so it's almost like a magnifying glass burning in on a specific spot of this thing, and that's the only part they can focus on, and the rest doesn't make sense to them, so I can't join. You know? Even though my light is strong in this one particular area and it's burning, I gotta help this issue. I can't join this because
you're not totally on board with torching a storefront, you know?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
or with even just the idea that could happen and you would be associated with those people and stuff like that, you know? Those people.
Like, I'm an anti-fascist. I'm totally anti-fascist. That should be the default position of everybody. Like, by default, you're anti-fascist, you're anti-authoritarian.
It should be. You tell them. It should be.
It should be.
You should be anti-fascist.
But I'm not going to go out and destroy a rally on the other side, because that's not my motivation, man. That's not my way.
Yeah, that's not my bag.
It's not my bag.
That's not my bag, man.
Like, I'm not gonna do that. Sorry. Like, I'll support you. I'll support anti-fascism as a concept.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna beat up Nazis because I'm like 120 pounds. I'm gonna get my ass kicked.
You are a pacifist.
Sure. Yeah. My ideas and the way I talk might be more aggressive than some pacifists, but I'm not a violent person by nature. You know. I'll argue you to death, if anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should wrap it back around to the what is it? SJWs, Social Justice Warriors, and
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter. Yeah.
Okay. How
are we doing on time? How's this thing looking?
Yeah, we're only halfway through.
How long is it?
So with this idea of extremism on either side, and how that relates to dogmatism, or at least being like a breeding ground for dogmatism, you get these ideas of being anti-science or anti-fact to support your your sort of prejudged morally superior position, right? So people on both sides get accused of denying science or denying the facts, and like with Black Lives Matter, for example, people will highlight that white people get stopped by cops too, and half the people that get killed in an altercation with cops are white too. It's not just black people that are getting killed by cops. But I don't think that these movements can be relegated to just that sort of superficial or extreme part of the movement that is prone to dogmatism and stuff like that. When the movements start off, before any dogmatists kind of come on,
dogmatists.
Sure.
They had plans all along.
No, well, there's usually a more sort of not benign but reasonable kind of motivation for why it comes up in the first place, right?
Right.
And so, like with Black Lives Matter, there is definitely evidence that shows an imbalance in terms of how the system treats people of color versus white people, like in interactions with the police. So
you're saying we can statistically prove it?
Yeah,
kind of thing,
statistically,
right?
exactly. When you look at the facts,
it's objectively provable.
Yeah, even though there are extreme BLM people who might even be like racist against white people generally, and say automatically anybody who's white is a racist or things like this. Mm-hmm. You'll also get the people who are just fighting to correct the actual statistics, such as the fact that only 13% of the population are black people, but 28% of arrests are arrests of black people versus other people. White people are statistically more likely to get let go when they once they are stopped, if they are stopped. And even though escalation of force seems to be equal irrespective of race, like in police interactions with somebody that they stop, they've found statistically that white and black people are equally likely to be in a situation or have an escalation of force happen in an interaction with the police. But as Mark mentioned at the beginning of the show, black people are 3 times more likely for that escalation of force to actually lead to their death.
Right.
Wow. So there's facts and numbers there to obviate, to make it obvious that there is an imbalance, that there is an unjustness there.
Right.
That needs to be corrected, and so I think when it starts just getting into trying to generalize or characterize an entire movement by its tactics or whatnot, then it's just a big game of obscuring the specifics of what's trying to be addressed there.
Right.
Like these movements spring up out of necessity to correct a problem, right? Mm-hmm. Like you just said, as you outlined very succinctly, there's an issue that they're fighting against. And it's a demonstrable issue through statistics and through the numbers. The unfortunate reality is in order to correct that problem, sometimes they will go to extremes. Sometimes BLM will take really radical measures in order to make their movement known or to address the root causes of the problem. They'll fire back at the cops and get themselves arrested in the process.
Right. And it's just a certain part. It's like saying, like the internet has multiple facets. It's like saying the internet got mad at me if I were to say, like, someone from the what is it, BLM movement got mad at me, at a protest or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, right, I see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The same is true about Antifa. The only reason why Antifa seems to be on the rise these days is because of the seeming rise of fascism. That's the argument in their favor, is that the only reason they're here is because fascists are here.
Yeah.
They're here to. I wouldn't necessarily call them the godsend savior to protect us from the rise of fascist ideology, but on the other side, I'd rather that they be here.
Hey, what do you guys think of that whole thing about getting rid of Confederate monuments or statues to historical figures that did have a prominent role in the historic development of
I can see the argument
of these places.
I can understand why they would want certain monuments to be taken down, like especially in the U.S. They're even talking about doing it here with John A. McDonald, renaming some schools because he had such a huge...
Well, just last year we renamed the Parkway...
Feel a little bit ashamed going to the school.
No, like some politicians or at least local politicians want to rename certain schools that were named after McDonald because of the role he had to play in the decimation of the indigenous population.
My God, if we found out every bad thing that prime ministers happened during the time of prime ministers, we'd hate them all.
We'd have nothing named after anybody.
Every single one probably has some sort
at the same time,
issue
though,
happening at that time that they knew about.
Yeah.
Everybody at some point has done something stupid, but that's not a justification.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I get that, but at the same time, erecting a monument is about elevating and celebrating something. It's a symbol, right? So like I to some extent, I'm totally cool with eliminating the concept of statues to people at all.
Yeah, no, I'm cool with that too. Like why are we
like let's elevate ideas.
I kind of like statues. I understand what you mean.
Sure, but if we're gonna have a statue, why not have like
a
sculpture of the Constitution or whatever? Why
it's
not
a
have...
boring statue, though. People is a better statue.
But like, why elevate certain people to
how
an
about
iconic
people
status?
doing something?
That's our association with the statue. I think we can change our association with statues. I mean, they're also pieces of art. I don't know. Some of them are a bit weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen have you seen the women on Parliament Hill with the giant hands?
Yeah.
Giant man hands.
Yeah.
Like it's so weird. It's
but
very similar to that.
There's like another statue on Parliament Hill that I friggin' love. I think
I'm not saying I don't like it.
It's a statue of Borden or something, or maybe it's Mackenzie King, where it's like it's sort of half really modern. So it's a statue of him, and his suit is really kind of angular, and it kind of blends in with the pedestal that he's on. It's like super fucking
I've got to
cool
check it out. Where is it? It's
I don't know. I think it's behind the Parliament building.
Okay,
somewhere.
behind.
Yeah. Is that a new one?
No, it's been there for decades.
I went walking around. There's a whole bunch of them. I had
there's
no
some
idea
really
they were
good
there.
ones.
They're kind
But
of hidden around there.
Okay, but
anyway,
regardless,
getting back
regardless of the artistic merit of individual statues, the idea of elevating a person in lieu of the idea that he's meant to represent or something.
For myself there, I don't have a problem with looking at a statue and hating the person because of something that they did, or hating the idea of what he represented, and also liking some of the other things that he did and stuff like that. So it's a rich experience I'm having with the statue and stuff like that.
But a monument is more than just a piece of art. You're talking exclusively about looking at it as a piece of art.
No, you're right, and I guess I am looking at it as a piece of art.
Like the monument is supposed to be...
It has a political...
It's a monument of this, right?
Like
You're right.
It's dedicated to the memory of this person who represents this ideal.
Yeah.
Why not represent the ideal in some other way? Like I said, with the idea of the Constitution, and have a giant fucking carving of the Constitution, or like
a statue of those men signing the Constitution.
Sure,
like rather than pretending that a man is
criticizing the artistic merit of its expression.
No, I'm not.
That's nitpicking about. You're right. That's nitpicking about the content of art.
But to get back to your original question, Joe, like I can understand why some people would want to get rid of the Confederate statues in the U.S. because it's such a sticking point. It's such an important facet of American
I'd
history.
rather
right?
see them destroy it artistically. That would be interesting.
That
would be
sure.
Kind of like a Burning Man.
For it to become some other monument in a sense.
What I find
to this past, so that it remains and therefore is affected afterwards with our continuing thoughts.
Yeah, I kind of love that. Like I kind of love this thing in New York where the Merrill Lynch bull,
the bull and the little girl,
and somebody else put up a little girl couple dozen feet away as if the girl is standing up to the bull. There's a whole new thing happening there all of a sudden.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
really cool.
You can isolate that stuff out and just look at the bull the way it was before if you want. But now there's this whole other thing going on with the thing, and I totally dig that. Everybody's appealing to like this kind of runaway slippery slope idea that no art can ever be
right.
Solid. It continues.
Art can be fluid, you know.
Yeah.
The ideas are fluid. So why not
boo-hoo. So art's fluid. Great.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why not? Instead of tearing down Confederate statues, why not have like something defending the other side? Spring up next to it or whatever, you know. Or have a statue of someone pulling down the Confederate statue. You know? That'd be cool. Why not? You know. That's another like symbolic
continuous
resistance.
Expression.
Yeah, continuous expression
with more art.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
No, now you got to add to that statue. Don't fuck it up.
Well, like the idea of the Constitution itself is fluid. It's like there are amendments for a reason. You know, things change over time. Nothing should be rooted in stone or carved in stone or.
One particularly weak angle of attack that I've heard regarding this whole tearing down of monuments thing is when it's being falsely equated with erasing history.
Right.
Like that's such fucking bullshit. Like read a fucking book for your history. Don't look at a stupid political monument that was put up by
that's more likely
racist city
be,
council or whatever. Like
it's more likely going to be propaganda.
Yeah, no, that's the counter argument to it. Like you're erasing his. No, you're not.
No, you're not. No,
you're taking down an ugly ass statue in the middle of the fucking park. You know, that's it. You're not. If you wanted to erase history, get rid of the history books.
Yeah. Burning books, that's erasing history.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, banning books from libraries and shit like that. Right. We all know who's especially prone to that kind of bullshit, right? And it certainly ain't the fucking Antifa.
Yeah. If anything, Antifa would defend against, you know, the whatever. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like extremism in any form just doesn't make sense. It's not the way to go. It's not the way to defend an idea. It's not the way to, you know, espouse an idea. It just.
I find that's extremist of you to say that.
Thank you, Luke.
Well, it's true though, in a sense, and I can find stuff within myself that I could say that I am extremist about.
So would you say I'm an extreme centrist?
You're extremist about not being extremist.
You know,
which may be wrong.
The philosopher Karl Popper had this idea called the paradox of tolerance.
Yes.
You know why they called him Popper? He always talked with the boner. Anyways, go on.
So it's like being intolerant of intolerance.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the moment you tolerate intolerance. I can't remember how that argument did.
Yeah, I can't remember what the quote is, but essentially, tolerance is absolutely an ideal, and should be defended and should be promoted, but not to the extent of tolerating intolerance, because as soon as you do that, then you undermine the concept of tolerance.
Right.
At all.
Yeah, I've been thinking about tolerance and how tolerance in a sense isn't necessary because tolerance suggests there is a problem. Unlike patience, where there's a problem that you're
that's
just
a semantic argument.
I think so, but am I because tolerance, what I'm associating with it
But you don't want like relativism where everybody gets a fucking prize for showing up. Like it's not
I'd like a prize for showing up.
What I'm saying is that I don't think we should have an obligation to move from tolerance to actual acceptance or whatever,
Right now.
You should be able to soberly say, no, this idea here, it's reprehensible, and I'm tolerating the expression of it, or whatnot. I'm not saying that I'm okay with it, because I don't think it's valid to undermine the suggestion of clashes between ideas and like we were saying about freedom of expression and stuff,
right.
Having those battle of ideas happen and having victors and losers come out of those battles. I'm absolutely happy to say that losers of rational
you were in support of the dialectic process
can be said to just be tolerated no more. Tolerated and nothing more, tolerated in terms of their expression rather than...
The quote goes as follows. Unlimited tolerance must lead to the disappearance of tolerance.
Yeah.
If we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we are not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of the intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed and tolerance with them.
Well, I don't really understand. So if there is a dialectic process happening... how is there not tolerance? Tolerance is more something that just occurs because you're not lashing out. It's just happening. I don't really understand.
Well, I think this is talking more about the political idea of tolerance, like the ideological idea of tolerance of the unknown, or when you look at fascists or authoritarians or xenophobes or whatever,
and you're not doing anything about it, then you are tolerating.
Yeah, well, if you defend
them, if
you defend the intolerance that they are enacting, that they're incarnating,
then you're undermining the idea of a tolerant society.
So thou shalt be tolerant, but not
of intolerance.
Of intolerance.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Because like I said, the moment you start tolerating the intolerant is undermining the idea or the entire concept of a tolerant society to begin with. And that's not something that we should permit.
That's not something we should tolerate.
No, it isn't.
I mean, it's like with multiculturalism and people, Muslim people and Muslim communities having their own tribunals, where they can apply a version of Sharia in their kind of little civil tribunal. Well, though there's a limit to tolerating those in terms of there being laws of the land. Like if there was a cultural idea that justified killing or murder,
right, violating human rights
for something that's absolutely prohibited by law, by the law of the land in the host country where the immigrant has landed.
Right.
There's no question that a country should be able to protect its sort of final law. It's I don't know.
It's the when in Rome argument in a way,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the law of the land supersedes that of your culture. If you're a visitor to Rome, you must adopt the law of the Romans.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if you're.
I mean, it's one thing to be tolerant and to actually encourage cultural diversity, and the exercise and practice of cultural differences, but it's another thing to say that you now have to just kind of park your own ultimate the things that have evolved as your political values or like a country's constitutional principles. it's a totally different thing to say that you're going to park that to accommodate the diverse.
For example,
cultures.
the honor killings that happened here a couple of years ago. I can't remember the name of the exact case, but like they murdered someone because it was part of their culture to do so because they wouldn't marry the person that they had set them up for.
Well, can we fairly say that is an extremist in this
Not
same
to them.
sense?
Not to them. It was part of their culture, so it was permissible to them. But the Supreme Court argued, "Fuck no! You're in Canada. You murdered somebody. You're subject to our laws. The culture cannot supersede the law of the land, right? It can't. It simply can't. And like that's the limit of our tolerance."
I feel that, and I don't know or anything, but I feel that that's still an extremist using.
They weren't extremists, though. It was part of their culture. It was part of their religion. It wasn't.
What I'm saying is, I feel like he's using his culture and religion for extremist ideas.
Yeah,
and
no,
stuff like that. I mean,
I
I really don't know anything about.
I think that's being too kind to what can actually be a common cultural practice or value or principle.
Yeah,
There are like it's not like all cultures are created equal or all cultural ideas are created equal. You want to defend tolerance and diversity and stuff like that, but I think there's place for debate about sort of the ultimate ethical value of killing someone for, let's say, sleeping with their boyfriend before they're married or something like that. You know, like in that society where that became a law, where it was okay, where it was expected that you should kill somebody who breaks that sort of religious law, that idea evolved, you know, without challenge. So it actually is normal and not extremist for everyone who was born in that society, grew up in that society, and came from families that also were born in and grew up in a society that held that as a normal value, or as a moral value even. So it's not extremist on some level because it's common.
I got you.
It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It was just an aspect of their culture and their society that they happened to translate here, right? We don't embrace that.
There's a rational argument for why that can't be, or for why that shouldn't be tolerated. You know.
Right. Well, this rational idea of good.
I would extend that to say the common good of the people. You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. What I was thinking is that different cultures, different groups, even now, you know, because we're talking about the SJWs or whatever. It's like the people lassoing their like cattle, you know, like cowboys, as if that's how you can define what good is. Like, these are the rules. Here, I got some, you know, and I caught one. And I'm making a lassoing action, everyone. I've just lassoed Gilles.
You're
I've caught you. I've wrangled you, and that's how I'm going to get to good, sort of thing. So it's like good is this continuous, spontaneous, amoebus thing, and we're lassoing chunks of it, and everyone's trying to go, this is the way, here, this is my calf, here's going to lead us to the promised land, kind of thing. Does this make any sense to anyone, or am I just like a madman?
Well, I think you're getting into sort of moral philosophy kind of,
which we'll cover in a subsequent episode.
And that is what's going on here, because we're asking, you know, is this the way? Is this the way?
Yeah.
You know,
no, and you're
so
right.
that's what I'm bringing up.
Yeah, that was our conversation was actually going there.
So that's why I was bringing it up, and either way, it doesn't lasso the whole.
No, it's like the blind people touching different parts of the elephant. The what's that?
Go on, sexy.
I don't know where it comes from, but there's just this idea of you know, you can have a bunch of blind people each holding a different part of the elephant.
I can have some blind
let's
people.
say one person is exploring the elephant, but has the elephant's tail. Another person has the trunk. Another person has the elephant's tusk. Another person has the elephant's foot. And the other person just has the broad side of its body.
Yeah.
Then they'll all have different ways of describing what this thing that they've got in their hand, what they're touching, is. But none of them are actually arriving at the truth of what an elephant is.
And that is what's happening here with all of these.
With the good, that seems to be what.
In a sense, with the bringing it back around to the SJW thing, it's like as soon as it becomes dogmatic and too rule oriented, it misses the point. It becomes fascist. If it goes too extremist, it becomes fascist. And becoming fascist is the thing they're trying to avoid, and they're forgetting that that's what they're trying to avoid there.
Yeah, and that's one of the dangers of these movements is it becomes very easy to degenerate into ideology or dogmatism, and
fascism.
Sure.
I like to keep it simple.
Okay.
Go right to even just the little seed of it is fascism, full on fascism kind of thing.
Yeah, they lose perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a meaning for fascism that's evolved though.
Original fascism was
fascism has a more strict meaning that's specifically like political and
as a political
economic
ideology. Yeah.
Well, I'm seeing being as a political process in and of all things, like everyone affecting me. Your cells are affecting my cells, being fascist right now.
Yeah, they're imposing themselves on your cells.
Yeah, you guys are imposing yourselves on this room.
So would you consider gravity to be fascist?
Yeah, in a sense, being an extremist in terms of being anti-fascist myself and trying to avoid it, it is impossible. And yes, gravity, very fascist. But, dick.
What a dick! Fucking Einstein.
But only here, right here. He's holding me. He's holding me back and down here, going, "No, thou shalt not fly like Superman." Here, but on another planet, he would be a much nicer guy, right? Of course, gravity.
Sure. Oh, okay.
Or girl. I'm not sure what gender gravity is.
So, final thoughts on social justice warriors, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, any of that?
I love them, even if I hate them.
It's all about the love.
My final thought would be skeptical of narratives that try and make them into something, because it's not necessarily thing. There's when I was trying to look up stuff about social justice and social justice warriors and Black Lives Matter and Antifa, most of the videos that I came across were videos of people making some kind of argument for why Antifa is awful, or why SJWs are the worst thing ever, and stuff like that. And I think most of those are things that are basically just maybe even inadvertently being propagandized rubes. There's just not SJWs just aren't as politically consequential as they're made out to be. I don't know. I don't know
about
how
that last bit there. You ended it with, how did you phrase it?
SJWs, social justice warriors, aren't as politically consequential as they're made out to be. They're used most often, it seems, to sort of broadly generalize them to the left,
right.
to be the worst possible characterization of anyone that's not of your own political ilk. If you're like a right winger or an alt-righter or a center-right guy who is just buying into the idea that the left are a cancer on society, or that
right.
SJWs are a cancer on society, and therefore the left is wrong. That's just playing a rhetorical, political propaganda game, And,
right. Like media itself is a characterization of what's actually happening, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's like a characterization of a characterization.
Yeah.
Within a characterization.
You lost me.
I don't. Yeah, no, I lost myself.
That last characterization, that totally lost me.
No, I think that was
the last turn in the maze.
I think that was too far.
So, Luke, final thoughts?
Well, give me some framework here because I'm just flying away. What are we talking about again? We're talking about SJWs.
SJWs, Antifa.
Like
BLM.
we want a big grand conclusion to how we feel about it.
Yeah.
Thumbs down. No, I don't know. Final thoughts. I don't think I have any final thoughts really. I don't know. I think I've said everything I have to say. I don't know. Yeah, I'm good. I'm clean with this one.
Okay.
Let me wash my
You,
hands
Mark?
of this.
Well, I think, same as usual, when trying to find any material on BLM or Antifa or just SJWs in general, it was really hard to find any kind of objective, non-biased source or non-biased story or article or anything. So it has become something that polarizing for both sides of the story, and yeah, it's very important to remain skeptical about any of these narratives involving SJWs or any of the SJW movements if we want to get a clearer picture of why they're doing what they're doing and what the root causes of the problem are. The rise of extremism on both sides is problematic to society as a whole, and I think a more balanced approach needs to be taken in order for us to come back to the center.
What is a balanced approach? Like, I understand what you're saying in the language that you're using and stuff like that, but what does that look like? What would a balanced approach be?
Embracing rational thought, embracing statistics and data.
I see. You mean
seriously.
educating, right.
In all seriousness, look at the information before making a snap judgment.
Right,
Gather the information, do some background research.
What is actually happening here?
Yeah. Be informed about what's actually happening and don't jump to the extreme because you feel passionately about an issue.
Well, man,
there is a place for passionate debate, right? But it has to be informed debate.
But it is true in a sense that the less informed are the more arduously presenting their ideas so harshly in a sense. So in a sense, the more violent the thoughts being presented.
Because the limited information that they do have takes up a much bigger space in their mind. So it's more important to them.
Well, to defend it.
Yeah.
It's making them angry. It's because internally, in a sense, it's known that it's wrong.
It's knee-jerk reactionism. For a lot
must be very uncomfortable to be so wrong.
In a lot of circumstances, it is knee-jerk reactionism. It's taking a stance because you feel very angry or very passionate about an issue without digging into it. You don't have the information on your side, and you're just yelling. Right? Both sides are just yelling at each other.
Well, I think it comes down to sort of this this battle between indulging in the search for righteous principles to nail down to okay, I've nailed being right on this, that kind of stuff. I think that's kind of a fool's errand and a wrong way of looking at education. I think people should be more about emphasizing how little they do know and how much more there is to learn about anything.
Sure, right.
Anytime you think you absolutely know something, then you're wrong.
Right. That's exactly where you're
wrong. Like Socrates said, the only thing I know for sure is that I know nothing.
Which you can't actually say.
To paraphrase.
It's a paradoxical thought right there.
Right. No, you're right. Speaking with absolutism is foolhardy. No one's an absolute authority on any subject. There's always something more to discover about it. I guess that's the only absolute statement that I can make.
I'm sure there might be others.
Probably.
And they could be documented. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
All right. So, this is... what?
Well, I was just going to say, sorry, I don't have any conclusion. I just find I always ramble on about the same shit, so I didn't want to bring it up again. It's already been talked about.
I'm happy with the shit that you ramble on about, so don't censor yourself for our benefit.
Well, no, but I do feel that this episode has spoken, in a sense, spoken for me. My thoughts have been expressed with what happened around me, so things are good.
Things are good?
Things are good.
Yep, okay.
All right, things are good. We'll leave it at that.
Sorry, it's because I didn't have a conclusion. I felt awkward about it. I just wanted to apologize.
I didn't have a conclusion last episode, I don't think.
No, I think you skipped your conclusion.
Yeah.
Oh, you skipped
Oh,
it.
I'm good. I spoke my piece.
Right? So, God, Mark, afterwards, God, yet again, Luke doesn't have an ending. God.
Motherfucker. It's all good, though. Let's end it at it.
That's like my least favorite expression.
It's all
So
good.
it's all good.
It's all good.
I think only one
It's all
person
good.
ever has ever used it, and it was in reference to a dog.
Oh
fighting,
yeah,
and
there's loads of expressions like that just
all
are like
bring
nails on a
irk
blackboard
you.
for
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
Like at the end of the day, I fucking hate that.
Oh, moving forward is another one. For
Moving
me,
forward.
Too.
Nails on a
Moving
chalkboard is one of mine. I can't say
That is, even just to say it, bring up the idea. He hears it.
well, on that note, this has been Critical Junction episode 24. I'm Mark.
I'm doing nails on the blackboard for my name. Luke. My name's Luke. Hi. Thank you.
And I'm Jill.
As always, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again next time.